What are they trying to prove? Perhaps you know this executive. You know the one who continues to hit the mark in terms of results, but insists on beating up direct reports, peers, and sometimes customers while doing so. I mean, it's not that no one notices or cares, it's just that the exec probably has enough chips in the bank for others to tolerate this behavior. It's also usually true that there are clear signals that he or she can interpret as supporting those behaviors. These signals might include, for instance, someone saying, even though you had lousy engagement scores and even though the results aren't exactly what we want, we're still going to move you to this new position. And oh, by the way, don't worry, you're not going to suffer any loss of pay or title. I mean, so what's the problem? Sometimes it comes out as, oh, well, we can't afford to move him now. These types of leaders never pop up overnight. So the question of whether anything can be done to them now has probably been avoided on several other occasions already. Equally important is, what does it cost to keep them as well as trying to move them now? So what's the problem? Well, we cannot afford to move him now. But these types of leaders never pop up overnight. I mean, so the question of whether anything can be done now has probably already been avoided during several discussions already. So can we move them now? What does it cost? I mean, equally important is the question of what is the cost to keep them in that role. When the customer says don't bring them, you might get it. When the direct reports leave or become fully disengaged, you probably actually overlook them, especially when they leave one at a time. When people are reluctant to join the team, you might even dismiss it as a matter of them not fitting in. In the end, you keep telling this bully that it's okay and that they keep getting proof that they're valued or at least tolerated until suddenly one day you say enough. Now, what are the consequences of continuing this behavior? I mean, if they don't change, the bully boss actually gets more skilled at what they do and continue to get results, though usually not sustainable ones. As a leader, he or she gets more proof that his efforts are worth the results, even if it works in some situations. Why not try it in others? She gets deluded into thinking that when it doesn't work, it's because her direct reports and peers and bosses don't get it. So perhaps this bully boss, I call him, and the organization can continue to find places where you can leverage that kind of strength, but usually you run out of those opportunities. Probably more importantly, the impact is that their development gets limited. Um, Keeping them in that role without providing consequences for their behavior, makes it more difficult for the organization to credibly drive, their commitment around a culture that's based both on results and desired behaviors. If it's one of your direct reports, is also diminishing your own credibility and effectiveness as a leader in that environment. Now, so there are lots of approaches you might take, but I want to hone in on a couple of ones that really try to drive at what's this bully boss trying to prove. And I think for me it was, with the last one I worked with, one of the things that was striking was that, they insisted that, for instance, they learned all their behaviors from the mentors, and it was kind of coincidental that all of their mentors had been retired for some period of time. But this particular bully boss also, really saw himself as a pretty effective coach, and at this point in time, really was fully invested in someday being seen as a potential CEO for the organization. So how would you approach him? Well, a couple of questions I used that I think really did have some impact on changing his behavior. One of them was, even though previous mentors shaped your behaviors in the past, what behaviors do effective leaders demonstrate in the current business climate? What can you learn from them? It's a pretty simple question and follow-up, but it's very important for leaders to have credible role models in the current organization. Second question, what kind of coach are you talking about when you say that you're an effective coach? I mean, are you actually a better game day coach, just to keep that metaphor, or practice day coach? And it's pretty clear that this person was pretty good game day coach. If things weren't working, you pull them out. For the long term, in terms of effectiveness, how capable was he as a practice day coach, where the real emphasis was on getting the person not only ready for the upcoming game, but for the rest of the season and for the rest of their career? Third question out of four, what, if anything, will you have to do differently to be a credible candidate for CEO? Essentially, are you willing to give up some of that, that's the way I am, in order to have a chance to be something and someone you have not yet been? And then the last question, which I put to him pretty candidly, was, what are you trying to prove? I mean, what difference would it make in the way you approach people if you focused on how can I improve a situation versus what can I prove, which usually falls in the category, how can I prove that I'm smarter, better, bigger, more authoritarian than you are? So how are you handling any bully boss in your organization? My advice to you is don't wait until they move out of the neighborhood on their own, because they're guaranteed to leave a few black eyes, including your own. Greg Pennington, Pennpoint Consulting Group.